Good afternoon, friends. Today I'm going to tell you about the movie The Ninth Life of Louis Drax. The film begins, and a boy named Louis Drax tells his story. His problems began the moment he was born. He was surgically removed. As a child, a chandelier fell on him, breaking all of his ribs. He almost died from electrocution. He had food poisoning and many serious illnesses, but on his 9th birthday the most important misfortune happens to Louis. Rescuers, police and forensic specialists are on their way to the scene of the tragedy. The boy had fallen from a cliff and showed no signs of life. He and his mother are taken to the hospital by helicopter, but the paramedics can only pronounce him dead. However, in the morgue, the child comes back to life. On such an unexpected and extraordinary occasion, one of the most distinguished doctors, Dr. Alan Pascal, arrived at the hospital. The doctors still believe that the patient's condition is extremely dangerous. In addition, he is in a coma. It is Pascal who deals with such cases. He talks to a mother named Natalie. He tells her that a real miracle has happened to her son, to which she replies that they just don't know her child, he's an angel. Louis, while in a coma, begins to tell his story. He says that he has always attracted trouble. His mother made an appointment for him to see a psychiatrist, but trouble happened there, too. At the session, Louis enjoyed spending time with the doctor, and it was a very interesting experience for the doctor. The boy didn't think like all the other children. He always talked straight and didn't lie. He could even be offensive or insulting. Back in the present, we see that Louis has been moved to a special ward. Alan Pascal talks to him and is sure Louis can hear him. At his next appointment with Dr. Perez, Louis comes in with a broken arm. He jokes that he broke it while digging a fat man's grave. The doctor remarks that he has had many injuries, to which Louis replies that he attracts them. Let's go back to the present. Louis's father is missing and has been reported missing. The police report that he pushed a child off a cliff and escaped. The police believe that all of Louis's illnesses prior to this were caused by him just trying to get attention. Dr. Pascal informs investigators that Louis is in a vegetative state and has no chance of waking up. However, Dr. Pascal is one of those doctors who believes that Louis can hear and understand everything. He tells all this to Louis's mother so that she, too, will believe it. Louis is really still here, albeit in a coma, telling his story from the past to some underwater monster. One day he and his father went to the dolphinarium and had a good time. There my father met an acquaintance of his who he was not very happy about. She was with her children and husband. At the hotel, the father tells Louis that this aunt is his ex-wife and asks him not to tell his mother that they saw her. When Louis returns home, the first thing he does is tell them who they met, seeing nothing wrong with the meeting. But his mother causes a scandal, and his parents begin to quarrel. Louis tells Dr. Perez everything, and it turns out that Louis knows that Peter is not his real father. Louis went to see his father. It turns out that he is a former fighter and dropped out because Natalie wanted him to. His father is not at all angry that Louis told her everything. A mother brings her son a new hamster. Louis was very fond of hamsters, but killed them as soon as they exceeded the hamster's standard lifespan. He told Dr. Perez why he did this. Louis said it was a right of disposal, and as the owner you could kill it if your pet lived longer than it was supposed to. The doctor wonders how he learned this rule and asks him to tell him about his father. At the next doctor's appointment, the mother comes to the showdown and says that her husband has done nothing wrong. Then she takes Louis away. The boy sends a letter to the doctor and puts the excrement of a hamster in it. The monster in his room asks him why he was so angry. Louis tells him that the doctor promised not to give away the secret, but the doctor betrayed him. During the walk, Dr. Pascal asks the woman to confide in him and tell him what happened. The boy's mother tells him that they decided to meet after a long break and had a picnic. But soon they began to argue about stopping their son's therapy, and Peter became aggressive. Louis got scared and ran away. Peter ran after him. There he continued his aggression and accidentally pushed Louis off the cliff. Dr. Pascal sympathizes with her and tells her that she deserves better. Then they kiss, but suddenly Louis wakes up and looks right at them. When the doctor runs up to him, he hears only 2 words, "My father," and Louis goes back, sinking into a coma. The boy remembers again how his father came to him one day and told him, with tears in his eyes, that he must go away. He and mom need to be apart. Dr. Pascal is reading Louis's favorite book, but he is interrupted by a strange sound. He finds swamp tracks and follows them. When he reaches the end, he sees a strange creature and wakes up. At night, Natalie calls him and asks him to come over. She receives a strange letter written as if from Louis. It says that the doctor is just like everyone else and that he only has intimacy on his mind. They report it to the police and think it is the runaway father who is intimidating them. Alan takes Natalie to the break room and goes to see Dr. Perez. He tells him all about the boy, his oddities, and shows him the very letter with the hamster feces. Alan hands over the letter left by Natalie. Perez is convinced that it is Louis's words and that only someone close to him could have forged it. Louis recalls the day his father came to visit them after a long life at a distance. The boy is very happy to see him, which cannot be said of Natalie. They go on a picnic together. On the way, Peter asks Natalie for permission to take Louis with him on his vacation, but she reacts negatively. Alan's wife comes to the hospital and brings a letter testifying to his adultery. The policewoman asks if Louis could have written the letter, to which Pascal replies that it is impossible. The police tell the doctor that Peter is not the child's biological father, and as an infant, Natalie wanted to give her son up for adoption. Alan comes to Natalie and asks about the child's biological father. She says that she was impregnated against her will, resulting in the birth of Louis, but she does not regret it one bit. Alan is supportive and sympathetic and then comforts her in his own way. Natalie tells her son the story of how she met his father. That night, when little Louis was in trouble, she called Peter, whom she barely knew. He came to comfort her and sat with her all night. After that, he divorced his wife and married Natalie. Louis asks the monster why she is telling him all this. In response, he tells him that he might just not listen, and calls him after him. Meanwhile, Louis is visited by his grandmother, the mother of his missing father, and immediately insults Natalie. She explains to the doctor that Peter loves Louis more than life and would never do such a thing. Their conversation is interrupted by the police and asks the doctor to leave the office. Peter's mother receives bad news. Louis and the strange creature find themselves on the edge of that very cliff. The monster asks Louis to jump with him again. Pascal informs Louis that his father's body has been found and sympathizes with him. After swimming underwater, the monster leads the boy to a scary cave. Louis asks him to tell him a story, to which the monster tells the story of 3 bats. 1 male and 2 females. He loved the female, who was always happy. But Monster thought he needed him more for the female, who was always crying. It turned out that she cried because she liked to be pitted. He also had a little bat that he loved more than anything else in the world. Louis realizes it's his daddy and says he doesn't want him to die. An autopsy reveals that Peter fell off a cliff in the same place as Louis, but that he was pulled into a cave, where he stayed for 2 weeks. The nurse tells Pascal that he has been sleepwalking and has written a strange note. Pascal looks at what it says and sees a killer prescription for Natalie. He tells the police that he thinks Louis is controlling him while he sleeps and that he is the one writing all these notes. The police don't want to believe this and think he was just doing it unconsciously while sleepwalking. Alan tells Dr. Perez, and he suggests an experiment in hypnosis. They put Alan into a state of hypnosis, and they manage to communicate with Louis. He begins to tell them what really happened. When they arrived, everything was fine until the mother decided to give her son a candy. The father asked for the candy, but she reacted very negatively. With all her might, she started to stop her husband from trying the candy. He thought she had put something in it, and a conflict arose. Louis, frightened, runs away. Running to the cliff, the father takes the child away from the rock. He begins to yell at her and ask her why she wants to hurt her son. She responds by pushing him off the cliff. Louis says that Daddy didn't know about the right of order, but Louis knew exactly and understood what his mother wanted him to do. Then he took a few steps and jumped off the cliff. Louis's heart stops. The doctor brings Pascal out of the trance and they manage to save the boy. Several months pass, and Louis continues to tell his story. Dr. Pascal made the mistake of thinking that because his mother was beautiful, she was nice, but she is not nice. Alan visits her in the hospital, and the doctor tells him that for 9 years she has been hurting her own son so that she could love and care for him. The boy, who had lived like this since birth, quickly realized what his mother wanted from him. He began to mutilate himself so that she would not do it. She goes through a serious mental breakdown, plus it turns out that she is pregnant and he will be the father of her new baby. Grandma spends all her time with Louis, but he likes being in a coma. His daddy is here, and he can always talk to him. His father tells him that he must not stay here. He must wake up, learn about the world, and move on with his life. Louis sees his father one last time and, with tears in his eyes, tells him that he will always be with him, even if he cannot see him. His father tells him that he loves him more than anything else, too, and Louis decides to move on with his life. This is where the movie The Ninth Life of Louis Drax ends. Thanks for watching. Sign up and like it if you want more of these reviews.